Somewhere in the back of a department store, on a floor most shoppers never bothered to reach, somebody was making the best meal you never got to eat. And the reason you never got to eat it isn't because it was too expensive or too hard to find. It's because the store closed. The recipe walked out the door with the last cook, and nobody thought to write it down before it was gone. Now, most people think of department store food as an afterthought, a place to grab a sandwich between the shoe department and the escalator. But that's not what these restaurants were. For most of the 20th century, the dining room inside a department store was one of the only places a woman could sit down and eat lunch in public without a man next to her. That's not a small thing. That's the whole reason most of these restaurants existed in the first place. And the food they served, some of it was extraordinary. These are 25 department store restaurant meals that have completely vanished from history. And one of them, the very last one on this list, started as a lie so good that an entire city believed it for over 100 years. Stay with me, because that one is worth the wait. Let's count them down. Number 25, the hot beef sandwich at any department store lunch counter you care to name. This was the baseline. 2 slices of soft white bread laid flat on a plate, roast beef piled on top. The whole thing buried under brown gravy, thick enough to coat a spoon. You ate it with a fork because you couldn't pick it up if you tried. It showed up on nearly every department store menu in America, from roughly 1920 through the 1970s. And then it just quietly disappeared the same way the lunch counters did, all at once, without anyone announcing it was leaving. Number 24, the chicken salad sandwich at Marshall Field's Walnut Room in Chicago. This one sounds simple until you realize what made it different. For decades, hungry shoppers enjoyed this as one of the fixtures of the Field's dining experience, which Mrs. Herring had set in motion back in 1890. But the sandwich itself wasn't the recipe. It was the mayonnaise, made in-house from scratch every day. Not a jar, not a brand, a genuinely homemade dressing that tasted like nothing you could buy at a grocery store. And the thing is, nobody thought to document it carefully before the store became Macy's. So after the transition, fans spent years trying to reverse engineer the exact formula from memory, comparing notes online, arguing about ratios. They never quite got there. The mayo is gone. The sandwich is a ghost. Number 23, corned beef hash with orange punch, served in an orange shell. This was the very first meal ever served in a Marshall Field's restaurant. The actual opening day lunch on April 15, 1890. 56 women, 15 tables set up on the 3rd floor. A red rose on every plate, corned beef hash and orange punch poured into a hollowed-out orange shell. It sounds like a catering decision someone made at the last minute, and maybe it was. But it was also the first formal restaurant meal ever served to women dining alone in a department store in Chicago. The menu itself was almost beside the point. What mattered was the room. Number 22, North Shore codfish cakes and Canadian cheese soup at Marshall Field's. In the tradition of Mrs. Herring, many of the cooks in those early days prepared their specialties in their own home kitchens and brought them in each morning. By 1941, the Depression had wiped out most of Field's dining rooms, and the store was running ads specifically pushing this codfish and cheese soup combination to lure shoppers into whichever of the 4 surviving restaurants was still open. It was Depression-era comfort food dressed up in department store china, regional, specific, and completely tied to a moment in time that nobody wanted to remember once it was over. Number 21, the Boundary Waters Wild Rice Soup at Dayton's in Minneapolis. Dayton's eventually folded into Marshall Field's, which folded into Macy's, so this one got buried under 3 layers of corporate history. But before all of that, the Oak Grill and the Sky Room at Dayton's served a wild rice soup that was genuinely regional, a Minnesota dish, made with the kind of wild rice that actually came from Minnesota lakes, served with warm popovers before the meal. That popover and soup pairing was a Minnesota-only tradition, and most national retrospectives about department store food Never mention it because it wasn't a Chicago dish. It wasn't glamorous enough to make the history books. It was just really, really good soup. Number 20, the Mandarin chicken salad at Dayton's. This was the other half of the lunch order that Dayton's regulars split between themselves. Half the table got the wild rice soup, half got the Mandarin chicken salad, and everyone shared. What's strange about this one is that it quietly outlived the Dayton's name. When the stores were absorbed into Fields and then Macy's, the salad kept showing up on menus, slightly altered, under different names in different cities. The dish survived the store. The store did not survive the dish. Number 19, the club sandwich with homemade mayonnaise at Scruggs, Vandervoort, and Barney in St. Louis. Same story as the Fields chicken salad, but in a different city and with a different ending. The mayo at Scruggs was distinctive enough that shoppers only figured out it wasn't a bottled dressing years after the store closed, when they tried to recreate the sandwich at home and couldn't get it right. It was made in-house, unlabeled, and never replicated after the doors shut for the last time. The sandwich was always paired with what regulars called the gold brick sundae, which was its own thing entirely. But the mayo is what people remember. Always the mayo. Number 18, the French onion soup at Famous Bar in St. Louis. This one is still cited by former shoppers as the dish they miss most. Above the store's clothing, above its decor departments, above everything else Famous Bar ever sold or served. A deep, properly made French onion soup with a crust of melted cheese over the top, served at lunch in a city that took its lunch hour seriously. When Famous Bar was absorbed into Macy's in 2006, the soup went with it. People still bring it up on St. Louis food forums like a wound that never fully closed. Number 17, the hot fudge sundae at Styx, Bear and Fuller, also in St. Louis. You might think a hot fudge sundae is a hot fudge sundae. Former shoppers at Styx would disagree with you. The version served at that store's lunch counter had its own devoted following, distinct enough from other department store sundaes that people who grew up eating it can still describe the specific texture of the fudge, thicker than most, slightly bitter, poured warm over vanilla ice cream that hadn't been scooped too far in advance. That specific combination vanished when the chain was absorbed into what eventually became Macy's. The recipe went with it. Number 16, the Coca-Cola salad at Rich's Magnolia Room in Atlanta. Yes, this is a real dish. A molded gelatin salad made with actual Coca-Cola, cherries, pineapple, and pecans, served chilled, often as a substitute for cranberry sauce at holiday meals. It sounds like a novelty, but in Atlanta, it was a regional institution, the kind of thing that showed up at church dinners and department store lunch counters alike, because Atlanta was Coca-Cola's home city, and using the product in food felt like civic pride. Rich's Magnolia Room served it as a serious menu item. Most people outside the South have never heard of it. Number 15, chicken salad and coconut cake at Rich's Magnolia Room. These were the two most beloved dishes at a restaurant that also carries one of the more uncomfortable histories in this list. The Magnolia Room was where Martin Luther King Jr. was arrested during a civil rights sit-in. The restaurant's children's menu at the time featured Brewer Rabbit on the cover, while the adult menu depicted a black woman serving white diners, a detail that most of the nostalgic coverage of the coconut cake era leaves out entirely. The coconut cake was genuinely extraordinary by all accounts. The history around it is more complicated than the recipes suggest. Number 14, the chopped egg sandwich at Schrafft's. Schrafft's was a chain, New York, Boston, Philadelphia, and its most popular lunch order for decades was a crustless chopped egg sandwich, cut into quarters, served on white bread. It sounds like the most ordinary thing imaginable, but Schrafft's also had a documented policy at the time of seating black customers and then deliberately not serving them because white waitresses did not serve black patrons. So the same sandwich that represented comfort and normalcy for one group of customers represented something else entirely for another. The egg sandwich vanished when Schrafft's closed. The history didn't. Number 13, the chocolate mint ice cream soda at Schrafft's. Longtime patrons specifically name this as one of the last things nobody serves anymore. Once soda fountains disappeared from American retail, Schrafft's ran proper soda fountains at a time when that was still a thing department stores and lunch counters did. The chocolate mint ice cream soda was a signature item, cold, sweet, slightly sharp from the mint, made to order at the counter. When soda fountains went away, this went with them. You can't even approximate it at most places today because the equipment no longer exists in most restaurants. Number 12, the hot fudge sundae at Schrafft's. This one has a stranger afterlife than most. Andy Warhol directed a commercial for Schrafft's that opened on a shiny red maraschino cherry and dissolved into a psychedelic swirl. A department store sundae directed by one of the most famous artists of the 20th century for a chain that most people under 50 have never heard of. The sundae itself was straightforward. Hot fudge, vanilla ice cream, whipped cream, that cherry on top. The Warhol commercial is the only reason most food historians know it existed. Number 11, toasted cheese bread with chicken salad and Russian dressing at Schrafft's. This was the other fan-favorite combo, built on Schrafft's proprietary cheese bread, a recipe the chain kept in-house and never public. What made Schrafft's unusual was a strict no-substitutions policy. You ate the standardized recipe exactly as corporate wrote it, at every location in the chain. No adjustments, no swaps, no, "Can I get that without the dressing?" The consistency was the point, and when the chain closed, the consistency ended permanently because there was no individual cook keeping the recipe alive somewhere. It was a corporate formula, and the corporation is gone. Number 10, the blueberry muffins at Jordan Marsh in Boston. This is the one that almost made it out alive. The muffins at Jordan Marsh were baked by the same single employee for 45 years. Not a team. One person, the same recipe for 45 years. After the chain closed, competing muffin shops opened specifically to keep the recipe alive commercially, which is a genuinely unusual thing for a department store dish to accomplish. Most of these foods died with the stores. The Jordan Marsh muffin fought back. Whether any of those competing shops actually got the recipe right is a different argument, and Boston has been having it ever since. Now, we're getting into the top tier of this list, and I want to flag something before we get there. The last 3 entries include a dish that was built on a complete origin myth, a story so widely repeated that even food historians got it wrong for decades. I'll get to that in a minute, but first, number 9, the kids' meal served in a tin stove, truck, teepee, or space capsule at Higbee's Silver Grill in Cleveland. One of the Silver Grill's most popular customs was delivering children's meals in little tin stoves, later replaced with cardboard stoves, as well as cardboard trucks, teepees, and space capsules. Every hamburger, every hot dog, every order of fries arrived inside one of these miniature-themed containers, and the kid got to keep it. The stoves became so iconic in Cleveland that the local PBS station had replicas made in the 1990s that were given out during fundraising drives. That's how much this city missed a cardboard box that used to hold a hot dog. The Silver Grill closed in 1989, and today, Higbee's is folded invisibly into Dillard's, and the Silver Grill is merely a memory. Number 8, creamed chicken at Higbee's Silver Grill. This arrived alongside the Welsh rarebit as one of the restaurant's Anglo comfort dishes. Soft, mild, nothing that would remind anyone of their grandmother's actual ethnic cooking. Part of the dish's appeal, according to the Silver Grill's own cookbook author, was what he called its sheer wasp-ishness. Cleveland, during that period, was an ethnic melting pot, and these dishes would not have been found in the ordinary ethnic home. The creamed chicken came in the same little covered casserole dishes the kids' meals used, the same presentation logic applied to adult comfort food. It was a restaurant that understood its audience very specifically, and the audience loved it for exactly that reason. Number 7. Welsh Rarebit at Higbee's Silver Grill. Nearly 2 decades after closing its doors, former patrons still talk about the Welsh Rarebit on its menu. A rich cheese sauce served over toast, garnished with exactly 7 whole almonds, plated on china designed under the famed Guy Cowan's supervision, and served by efficient yet gracious waitresses in understated Art Deco elegance. The most ordered dish for decades at a restaurant that was an immersive Art Deco experience. Art Deco was the height of fashion when Higbee's opened in 1931, and a meal at the Silver Grill was a celebration of everything Art Deco stood for: luxury, glamour, hope, and the power of progress. The Welsh Rarebit was the anchor of all of that. 7 almonds, every time. Number 6. The Orange Soufflé Salad at Neiman Marcus Zodiac Room in Dallas. Helen Corbett created this. A whipped gelatin base, orange-flavored, served cold, delicate enough that it required specific molds and specific timing to get right. Stanley Marcus called her the Balenciaga of food. That's not a small compliment from a man who ran one of the most famous fashion stores in the world. She put Marcus off for 7 years before she accepted his offer to run the Zodiac Room, the upscale restaurant on the top floor of the specialty store in downtown Dallas. The orange soufflé salad is the dish that most clearly shows what Corbett was doing, taking something that sounds like a ladies' luncheon cliché and making it precise enough that it actually required skill to execute. The recipe exists. The restaurant where it was served as intended does not. The Zodiac Room closed because Neiman Marcus shut down its downtown Dallas flagship store on March 31st, 2025. Due to a lease dispute with the building's landlord. Number 5. Frozen yogurt at the Zodiac Room. Stanley Marcus tasted a frosty chocolate concoction on his travels in the early 1970s and liked it so much he rented refrigerated train cars to ship the product to Dallas so the Zodiac Room could serve it. That is a man who took his restaurant seriously. Frozen yogurt landed on the Zodiac menu years before it became a mainstream American food trend, which means one of the most fashionable department store restaurants in the country was serving the future while everyone else was still figuring out what it was. The dish itself is everywhere now. The version that arrived via refrigerated train car is gone. Number 4. Popovers with strawberry butter and chicken consommé at the Zodiac Room. Since 1955, Neiman Marcus has served homemade popovers with strawberry butter at each of its in-store restaurants. The dish was born of Stanley Marcus's desire to feed people something delicious while they waited in line for a table at the Zodiac. Helen Corbett came up with the idea of a popover, as the light, fluffy bread had just a few ingredients and was easy to bake. She served hers with strawberry butter, which was itself the product of an inspired decision to add strawberry preserves to whisked butter. Every meal at the Zodiac opened with this: the popover, the butter, a small cup of chicken consommé alongside it. The batter had to rest a full hour before baking and didn't freeze, which is part of why it was never mass-producible. To this day, the popovers are made fresh throughout lunch service and go straight to the table from the oven. Or they were, until the flagship closed. The tradition continues at other Neiman Marcus locations, but the room where it started is gone. Number 3. Mrs. Herring's Chicken Pot Pie at Marshall Field's Walnut Room. The origin story here is almost too good to be true, and the remarkable thing is that it mostly is true. Early in the 20th century, a woman was shopping in the millinery department and said she was hungry. With the lack of restaurants serving women, a sales associate named Mrs. Herring shared her homemade chicken pot pie. The gesture became incredibly popular, prompting Marshall Field to open a modest tea room. The Walnut Room alone reportedly served an average of 600 pot pies daily at its peak. The restaurant opened in 1907 in the Marshall Field's department store on State Street and still thrives today. Despite the store having become Macy's in 2006, making it America's longest-running continuously operated restaurant within a department store. The pot pie is technically still on the menu, but the version Mrs. Herring made, brought in from her own kitchen, shared with 2 complaining customers who had nowhere else to eat. That version is gone. What replaced it is a tribute. The original was an accident. Number 2, the lobster bisque at Marshall Field's Walnut Room. Still on the modern menu, which makes this one feel like a trick. But longtime regulars of the original Walnut Room will tell you that the current version and the original are related in name only. The original was built around a specific, deliberate splash of sherry. Not a garnish, not an afterthought, but the actual signature move of the dish. Regulars who ate it for decades name the sherry as the thing that made it different from every other lobster bisque in Chicago. The lobster was good, the sherry was the point. Whether the current version still gets that ratio right is something former regulars argue about. The original cooks who knew the answer aren't there to settle it. And number 1, Frango mint candy and desserts at Marshall Field's. Here is the dish that carried a lie for 100 years, and the lie is more interesting than the food. The popular story is that Frango was a Chicago invention, born at Marshall Field's, and that the name was changed from Franco to avoid association with the Spanish dictator Francisco Franco. That story is told in gift shops, in food histories, in nostalgia pieces about Chicago's department store era, and it is wrong on almost every point. Frango did not start in Chicago. The Frango chocolate mints have been a famed Marshall Field's offering since 1918, but the product itself originated at Frederick and Nelson, a department store in Seattle, where it began as a frozen, fork-eaten dessert, not a chocolate at all. Fields only acquired Frango after buying the Seattle chain in 1929, and the renamed from Franco story is contradicted by a trademark filing from 1918, years before Franco was a figure anyone outside Spain had heard of. The real origin of the name is genuinely unclear, but the myth is so well established that even people who know it's wrong still repeat it, because the true story is less satisfying. A department store in Seattle invented a frozen dessert, sold it for a decade, and then a bigger store in Chicago bought the recipe and turned it into chocolate candy. That's the real history. Nobody puts that on a gift box. And that's the thing about all 25 of these dishes. The food was real. The restaurants were real. But the stories that grew up around them, the myths, the origin tales, the secret recipes that were really just house mayonnaise, those stories are what kept the food alive in people's memories long after the last plate was cleared. You can't order any of these meals anymore, but you can still argue about them, and apparently people do, on food forums and in comment sections, and at family dinners where someone brings up the Jordan Marsh muffins, and suddenly everyone has an opinion. If you grew up eating at any of these restaurants, or if you know someone who did, drop it in the comments. Tell us the dish, tell us the store. We read every one of them, and we're building a follow-up list right now. And if you want more videos like this one, hit subscribe, because that is exactly what this channel does.